2026 is not a new chapter. It's a mirror that will reflect the decisions you make every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something powerful right from the start. You do not need a breakthrough year. You need a disciplined year. Most people think success comes from massive action taken once in a while, but history doesn't reward explosions. It rewards consistency. If you improve just 1% every day, by the end of 2026, you won't recognize the person you used to be. The biggest lie people believe is, if I work harder, my life will change. No, if you change who you are, your work will change automatically. Your identity controls your habits. Your habits control your results. Stop asking, what do I need to do? Start asking, who do I need to become? When your identity upgrades, improvement becomes natural, not forced. 2, respect the power of daily decisions. Success isn't built in years, it's built in days. Every day you are casting a vote for the person you are becoming. 1-page read, 1 healthy choice, 1 focused hour, 1 difficult conversation. Individually, they look small, but compounded, they become unstoppable. Your future is hidden in your daily routine. Most people try to change their life using willpower. That's why they fail. Willpower gets tired, systems don't. If you want to improve 1% every day, don't rely on motivation. Engineer your environment, remove distractions, reduce friction, make the right action easy, make the wrong action hard. You don't rise to your intentions, you fall to your systems. Motivation is emotional, skills are permanent. In 2026, your income, confidence, and influence will be determined by the skills you develop today. Skills compound faster than effort. Skills create leverage. Skills pay dividends for life. When you invest in skill development daily, even 1%, your value multiplies. Nature rewards consistency. The sun rises consistently. Seeds grow consistently. And growth works the same way for humans. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be faithful. What you do every day becomes who you are eventually. Consistency turns average people into extraordinary ones. Every day you face a choice, comfort now or freedom later. Improving 1% daily means choosing discipline when no one is watching. It means doing small, hard things so life doesn't give you big, hard ones later. Short-term discomfort creates long-term dominance. Let me leave you with this. 2026 will pass, whether you grow or not. Time is not waiting for permission. So the question isn't, can you improve 1% every day? The question is, will you? Because if you do, 1 year from now, your mindset, income, confidence, and character will all be operating on a higher level. Small decisions, daily discipline, massive destiny. Most people believe that transformation begins with effort. Work harder, push longer, sacrifice more. But effort without the right identity is like pressing the gas pedal in the wrong direction. You may move fast, but you won't arrive where you want to go. Real improvement does not begin with intensity, it begins with identity. The way you see yourself determines the standards you tolerate, the habits you repeat, and the results you accept. You don't consistently act out of motivation or discipline. You act out of alignment with who you believe you are. Every action you take is an expression of self-image. If you see yourself as someone who quits, you will eventually quit. If you see yourself as average, you will unconsciously sabotage extraordinary opportunities. But if you decide, not hope, not wish, but decide that you are the kind of person who grows daily, who finishes what they start, who honors commitments even when it's uncomfortable, then improvement stops feeling forced. It becomes natural. Your behavior catches up to your belief. That's why intensity fails so many people. They try to outwork an identity that hasn't changed. They wake up fired up, promise themselves this time will be different, and push hard for a few days. But when emotions fade, the old identity pulls them back. You cannot sustain a life that contradicts the story you tell yourself about who you are. Eventually, you will return to your internal comfort zone. Identity is the thermostat. Intensity is just a temporary spike in temperature. When you change identity first, everything else becomes easier. You stop asking, how do I force myself to do this? And start asking, what would someone like me do in this situation? That question alone rewires behavior. A person who identifies as disciplined doesn't debate whether to show up. They show up. A person who identifies as a learner doesn't wait for motivation, they study. A person who identifies as a leader doesn't look for excuses, they take responsibility. Improving 1% every day in 2026 is not about dramatic changes, it's about daily alignment. Each small action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. One healthy choice reinforces the identity of someone who respects their body. One focused hour reinforces the identity of someone who values their future. One kept promise reinforces the identity of someone who trusts themselves. Over time, these votes accumulate and your identity solidifies. At that point, growth is no longer a struggle, it is simply who you are. The moment you prioritize identity over intensity, pressure disappears and progress accelerates. You stop chasing motivation and start building character. You stop trying to prove something and start becoming something. And once identity is established, improvement doesn't require hype, force, or burnout. It requires consistency. Because when who you are is aligned with where you're going, 1% growth every day is not difficult, it's inevitable. Most people overestimate what they can change in a day and underestimate what they can NGE in a year. That's because they are looking for dramatic moments instead of directional ones. Growth doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers through small decisions made repeatedly, often unnoticed, until one day the results are impossible to ignore. Daily decisions compound whether you are paying attention or not, and the direction of that compounding is determined by the choices you make when no one is watching. Every day you wake up and cast votes for the future version of yourself. Not once in a while, every single day. What you eat, what you read, what you tolerate, what you postpone, what you focus on, and what you ignore are not neutral actions. They are investments. Some pay interest, others accumulate debt. The danger is that the cost or benefit of today's decision rarely shows up today. It shows up weeks, months, and years later. That delay is why so many people make poor choices consistently. The consequences feel invisible in the moment. Compounding works quietly but relentlessly. One skipped workout doesn't weaken you. 1 hour wasted doesn't ruin your career. One bad conversation doesn't destroy a relationship. But repeated daily, those small choices create a trajectory that becomes extremely difficult to reverse. In the same way, one healthy meal won't transform your body, one focused study session won't master a skill, and one disciplined morning won't change your life. But done daily, they build momentum that eventually works for you instead of against you. The power of compounding is that it removes the need for extreme effort. When your daily decisions are aligned with growth, progress becomes automatic. You don't need massive bursts of motivation because the system is already moving forward. Improvement becomes less about willpower and more about direction. Even on low energy days, the right small decision keeps you in motion, and motion maintained long enough becomes momentum. What makes daily decisions so powerful is that they shape your identity over time. You don't become confident from one brave act. You become confident by repeatedly choosing courage in small moments. You don't become disciplined from one intense week. You become disciplined by honoring small commitments daily. Eventually, your decisions stop feeling like effort and start feeling like standards. At that point, you are no longer trying to improve. You are simply living in alignment with who you've trained yourself to be. In 2026, the difference between stagnation and transformation will not be talent, intelligence, or opportunity. It will be the accumulation of ordinary decisions made consistently. The future you admire is not built in a single defining moment. It is built quietly, patiently, through thousands of small choices that compound into extraordinary results. When you respect the power of daily decisions, you stop chasing instant change and start building inevitable progress. Most people believe that if they just become stronger, or disciplined, or more motivated, their life will change. But willpower is a limited resource. It gets tired, distracted, and overwhelmed, especially when it's forced to fight the same battles every single day. That is why relying on willpower alone eventually leads to burnout and frustration. The people who improve consistently are not the ones with superhuman self-control. They are the ones who design their environment to support the life they want to live. Your environment is shaping your behavior more than you realize. What you see, hear, and have easy access to influences your decisions before you even become conscious of them. If distractions are always within reach, focus becomes a struggle. If unhealthy options are the default, discipline feels exhausting. The problem is not a lack of desire to improve. It is an environment that constantly pulls you in the opposite direction. When your surroundings are misaligned with your goals, willpower has to work overtime just to keep you in place. High performers understand that success is less about resisting temptation and more about reducing exposure to it. They don't try to win every internal battle. They eliminate unnecessary battles altogether. They remove distractions from their workspace, place tools for growth within reach, and structure their days so the right actions happen by default. When the environment is designed correctly, the better choice becomes the easier choice, and progress requires far less effort. The environment also includes the people you spend time with and the conversations you allow into your life. The standards around you eventually become the standards within you. When you surround yourself with people who normalize growth, discipline stops feeling extreme. When excuses are common, progress feels unnatural. Over time, you adapt to what is familiar. That is why changing your environment often produces faster results than trying to change yourself directly. New surroundings create new expectations, and new expectations shape new behavior. Improving 1% every day in 2026 is not about fighting yourself daily. It is about setting yourself up to win. When your phone is no longer the first thing you see in the morning, focus improves. When learning resources are visible and accessible, growth becomes routine. When your environment rewards the behavior you want, consistency becomes automatic. You stop depending on emotional energy and start relying on structure. When you understand that environment beats willpower, you stop blaming yourself for inconsistency and start taking responsibility for design. You recognize that discipline is not a personality trait, but a product of alignment. Once your surroundings support your goals, improvement no longer feels like a struggle. It feels like momentum. And when momentum is on your side, 1% progress every day is not only possible, it's sustainable. Most people wait to feel motivated before they take action, believing that motivati is the engine of progress. But motivation is unpredictable. It rises and falls with emotions, circumstances, and energy levels. If improvement depends on motivation, progress will always be inconsistent. Skill acquisition, on the other hand, does not rely on how you feel. Skills work for you even on the days you don't feel inspired, confident, or excited. That is why people who focus on building skills outperform those who chase motivation. A skill is stored effort. Every time you practice, study, or apply a skill, you are depositing value that can be withdrawn later without additional emotional energy. Once a skill is developed, it becomes automatic. You don't need to hype yourself up to use it. It simply operates. Motivation may get you started, but skills keep you moving long after motivation disappears. That is the difference between temporary progress and lasting growth. Skill acquisition also creates leverage. One motivated hour can feel productive, but one well-developed skill can produce results for years. Communication skills create influence. Technical skills create income. Thinking skills create better decisions. Problem-solving skills create opportunity. When you invest daily in skill development, even in small increments, you increase your value in ways that compound over time. The world does not reward effort alone. It rewards the ability to produce results consistently. Another advantage of focusing on skills is that they build confidence naturally. Confidence does not come from positive thinking or external validation. It comes from competence. When you know you can perform, you don't need to feel motivated to show up. You trust your ability. This trust removes hesitation and reduces fear, which further accelerates improvement. As skills grow, resistance shrinks. Improving 1% every day in 2026 means identifying the few skills that move your life forward and working on them even when it feels boring or uncomfortable. Skill building is not always exciting, but it is always productive. While motivation seeks stimulation, skills are built through repetition. That repetition may feel ordinary, but it creates extraordinary outcomes over time. When you prioritize skill acquisition over motivation, you stop negotiating with your emotions. You stop waiting for the perfect mood. You simply show up and practice. Eventually, the skill becomes part of who you are. At that point, progress no longer depends on how you feel. It depends on what you have trained yourself to do. And once skills are in place, improvement becomes inevitable, reliable, and scalable, making 1% daily growth not a struggle, but a system that works even on your worst days. Consistency governs everything that grows. Nothing in nature becomes strong, fruitful, or reliable through occasional effort. The sun rises consistently. Seasons change consistently, and seeds grow through steady repetition, not sudden force. Human progress follows the same principle. When actio NS are repeated long enough, they stop being something you do and start becoming something you are. That is why consistency feels powerful. It aligns you with a law that operates whether you believe in it or not. Most people struggle, not because they lack ability, but because their effort is sporadic. They work intensely for a short period, then disappear, then try again later with renewed emotion. This cycle creates frustration because intensity without consistency produces exhaustion, not results. Growth does not respond to emotional surges. It responds to faithful repetition. What you do occasionally creates experiences. What you do consistently creates identity. Consistency works quietly. It rarely feels impressive in the moment. Repeating small actions daily can feel boring, insignificant, and unrewarding at first. But repetition creates roots, and roots create stability. The longer you remain consistent, the less effort it takes to continue. Over time, resistance decreases, habits solidify, and progress accelerates. What once required discipline eventually requires only intention. Improving 1% every day in 2026 means honoring consistency even when progress feels invisible. Results are delayed by design. The delay is not punishment. It is protection. It filters out those who want quick validation from those willing to build lasting change. When you continue showing up without immediate reward, you develop patience, discipline, and trust in the process. Those qualities become assets that extend far beyond the original goal. Consistency also creates alignment between your actions and your self-image. Each repeated action reinforces the belief that you are someone who follows through. Over time, this self-trust becomes more valuable than the results themselves. You no longer need external pressure to stay on track because internal standards have been established. You act consistently not because you are forced to, but because inconsistency would feel unnatural. When you understand consistency as a spiritual law, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking whether you feel like showing up and start asking whether you are willing to honor the process. Consistency removes drama from growth. It replaces intensity with integrity. And when integrity guides your daily actions, progress becomes inevitable. Not because you are exceptional, but because you are aligned with a law that never fails. Most people are not held back by lack of opportunity. They are held back by the need for immediate comfort. The desire to feel good now often overrides the discipline required to build something meaningful later. Delayed gratification is the ability to resist short-term pleasure in favor of long-term gain. And it is one of the clearest separators between those who remain average and those who rise to positions of influence, control, and freedom. Dominance is not created through intensity or luck. It is created through the consistent willingness to delay reward. Every meaningful achievement demands a trade. You either pay the price now and enjoy the reward later, or you enjoy the comfort now and pay the price later. There is no third option. People who choose immediate pleasure often don't realize they are making a decision. It feels harmless in the moment, but over time, those small choices accumulate into limitations, limited skills, limited health, limited finances, and limited options. Delayed gratification, on the other hand, compounds into leverage. Choosing discipline over comfort rewires how you relate to effort. You stop avoiding difficulty and start using it as a tool. Discomfort becomes a signal that you are investing, not suffering. Each time you choose to work when it would be easier to rest, to learn when it would be easier to distract yourself, or to save when it would be easier to spend, you strengthen self-control. That self-control becomes an internal authority. You trust yourself because you know you will do what needs to be done even when it's inconvenient. Delayed gratification also builds patience, and patience creates strategic thinking. When you are not desperate for immediate results, you make better decisions. You choose quality over speed, substance over appearance, and sustainability over shortcuts. This long-term perspective separates leaders from followers. Leaders are willing to build quietly while others seek attention. They understand that dominance is established before it is recognized. Improving 1% every day in 2026 requires saying no to many things that feel good in the moment but cost you in the future. It means choosing focus over distraction, growth over comfort, and preparation over applause. These choices rarely feel dramatic, but they are powerful because they accumulate silently. While others are chasing quick wins, you are building a foundation that cannot be shaken. When delayed gratification becomes a standard rather than a struggle, dominance emerges naturally. You are no longer reactive to impulses or emotions. You control your time, energy, and direction. That control creates freedom, not instantly, but inevitably. And when freedom meets consistency, the result is authority over your outcomes. That is how delayed gratification, practiced daily, turns ordinary discipline into lasting dominance. As we close, remember this: the goal was never to become perfect. It was to become progressive. Improving 1% every day is not about dramatic reinvention. It's about daily alignment with the person you are becoming. Identity sets the direction. Daily decisions set the pace. Environment removes resistance. Skills create leverage. Consistency activates the law. Delayed gratification secures the future. 2026 will not reward intentions, talent, or excuses. It will reward discipline, practiced quietly and repeated daily. You don't need to do everything. You need to do the right small things consistently. When you commit to that standard, growth stops being something you chase and starts being something you experience. So don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for permission. Decide who you are, align your actions, and honor the process. If you show up for yourself every day, even just 1% better, the results will compound into confidence, clarity, and control over your life. The future is not built in one moment, it is built daily, and it starts now.